I've just done a series of entries to the video, and one of them was like Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello. So hello. Anyway, 4 years ago today or thereabouts, I received all clear for my scans, for my full body PET scan, and I had been with active cancer since 2019, around about April 2019, but I postponed my actual diagnosis because I really didn't want to know, if I'm honest. Each step I had to be ready, so it was like sloth pace, because it was like my nervous system needed to settle down from the bit before. So like, for instance, find a lump. Okay, then get a doctor's appointment. Okay, I'll do that when I'm ready. Then I get the doctor's appointment, and then it's on to the next appointment. And it's like, okay, I'll do that when I'm ready. And the doctors kind of got used to me just being very, very slow. You know, I took complete responsibility for it, but I had to go at that pace. I couldn't overload my nervous system. Basically, it would have just been hell on earth. I'd have been just stuck in fight or flight. And I knew that if I was going to heal, I had to get to a point whereby my nervous system was calm, settled, because it's in that state that you get rest and repair. Otherwise, your body's in survival mode and it's not healing for shit. So it was all done at my pace. And people don't know that they can do that. But, you know, you've got sovereignty over your body. It's entirely up to you how you proceed with any medical treatment. You can listen to the doctors, you can take their advice, but you don't have to. If it doesn't resonate with you, if you don't feel like you want to, then do what you need to do. My doctors got so used to me just kind of freestyling it on my own that they left me to it. Which a lot of people, okay, I understand it would be like fucking scary. But for me, it would be scary to have them breathing down my neck. I just needed space so that I could check in with me to see if the course of treatment that I was doing was the right one for me. And I chose initially to, as soon as I found the lump, it was like, right, what can I do to empower myself right now? And it was a juice and soup fast. I did a 5-day soup and juice fast. And the lump that I found actually wasn't there then when I went for my appointment. And so I knew that what I was doing had significant effect on my body. In fact, my left breast, I'd had a couple of fibroadenomas. If you don't know what they are, they're lumps, basically. And my left breast was so inflamed that it was almost double the size of my right one. And that juice and soup fast righted that within 5 days. Like, I'd had that inflammation for at least 2 years. And I just thought, well, it's me. But it shows that my body really needed to just be nourished, really. And so once I had confirmation that my body enjoyed what I was doing, it was like, okay, if I just keep tuning into that guidance, then I'll be doing the right thing for me. And so that's why I took everything at a snail's pace, so that every decision I made was from the right place, so that I had kind of stability of mind and nervous system, so that I wasn't just knee-jerk fear reacting to whatever the doctors decided to do with me. I'm not a pawn in someone else's life. This is my life, and I will be in charge of what happens to me. I've had so many experiences with doctors over the years that I just decided that with cancer, it's too serious to fuck about. You've got to kind of take responsibility. That's how I felt about myself. And a lot of people will be squirming at the thought of kind of my actions, as in cancer was too serious for me to fuck about. A lot of people feel safe in the hands of doctors. I don't. And it's not every doctor, you know, there are some amazing ones, but in my experience, I know my body better than anyone. And so few doctors have ever listened to what's happening with me, what I believe is the issue, what symptoms I am having. They've got their predetermined script, and that's it. If you tell them, from my experience, when I've told a doctor, they just kind of look pityingly, like, how does she think she knows what she's talking about? Of course I do. It's my body. I know everything about my body. And so I kind of had the arrogance, if you like, or the confidence to trust in my instinct and to trust that my decision was the right one. And so I felt safe doing what I believed would heal me. And it was hard work. Like, it was hard work. From diet to meditation to cutting out, you know, things that I enjoyed. I mean, when it came to diet, that was probably the thing that I was the loosest with, because I just thought, no, I can't be on some kind of vegan diet where you have like 150 fucking fruit and vegetables with every meal. That's not going to happen. I need something that slots into my life as a single parent that doesn't cause me stress. And meal planning, shit like that, too much stress. So I was quite loose with that. I ensured that I nourished my body and didn't take the piss, poisoning myself with sugar and processed foods. But I wasn't bang on. Like, I'd have fried egg sandwiches often. It was kind of an easy go-to for lunch. There's a mosquito. My God, it's late October. No, it's not. It's middle of October, and there's a mosquito. So I made decisions based on what worked for me, like a completely individual prescription. And lucky my oncologist was lovely, and she I think on my first appointment, she kind of pulled a chair out and sat directly opposite me and just looked into my eyes, and she was like, do you understand kind of what you're saying? And it's like, yeah. And she was like, okay then, fair enough. I will agree to monitor you. And I'm here if anything changes, if you need me. And it was like, oh my God, you know, I'd won the oncologist lottery. And so she kept to her word. She never pressured me into anything, and she monitored me all that I wanted monitoring. If I didn't want to scan, which I didn't, I had 2 scans. I had the PET scan at the beginning, and then I had the PET scan at the end, because I didn't want the in-betweeny bit. I didn't see the point. It was like, when I feel like I'm ready, I will go for my second scan. But I don't just want a CT scan, because CT scan might be ambiguous. That's Toppy. She's the bitey one. And I didn't want ambiguity. I wanted to know exactly what was happening. And so she agreed to give me a PET scan, bless you, to check that, you know, what I was doing was working or not working. And right, come and set my laptopy. Come on. Good girl. Put your bottom down. We don't want to show that. Put your bottom down. Excuse me. So basically, my second PET scan was October 2020. Sorry, Tops. Down you go. And I'm going to hide that picture behind in case you get subliminal messages, which are a bit sweary. I got a clear scan. Like, my oncologist phoned me in the morning, and like, I'd been revising it in my head, you know. I hated going to scans, like, you know, it was terrifying. But I'd been revising it over and over in my head. It's like, there's no, like, everybody dreams. When you get given a cancer diagnosis, your dream then is to receive. There is, what do they call it? No signs of, like, cancer. There's no active cancer. No active disease, whatever. And she phoned me up and she said something like that, and I basically screamed down the phone at her, and me and the kids were bouncing on the bed. It was just like the most wonderful thing. And then suddenly it was like, oh my God, did I just imagine what she told me? Or did I hear right? Or did she say maybe there isn't? You know, you get off a phone call and it's like your brain goes in 100 different directions trying to create fear. And but my bloods had also come through saying that I was, you know, my health was looking really good. So when the two came together, it was like, well, you can't really argue with that, can you? It's like, I'm all right. Being all right after being given like a metastatic breast cancer diagnosis is just insanity, really. It's everything I dreamed, but it's hard to think that that'll ever come true, because people don't just heal cancer without chemotherapy and all that shit. And yet I had. And I knew I could, because that guidance was always telling me, you've got this. Just follow what feels right. You know, you're being guided. I'm being guided. And when I was in that place of listening and trusting, it was like I knew I was going to be all right. And then I'd go into fear and I'd buy a whole load of other supplements. And that was because I didn't trust that I would be all right. I was doubting the whole situation. But I began to recognize when I was in fear and I could pull myself back into trust. And I remember, basically I'm making this video because I remember the amount of fear that I had. Like the first time I found my lump, which was in 2013, and I just left Kid's dad, and it was our first month in our new house, and Christmas was coming around, and I found it on Christmas Eve. And I remember I couldn't tell anyone. How can you tell someone you found a lump on Christmas Eve? You can't. It's just, so I had to be with this kind of secret. And going to like the Christingle, which we did every year, it was one of those, what if I'm not here next year? And when I got that diagnosis again in 2019, so the Christmas of 2019, I was facing that question again, you know, back at the Christingle 6 years later, and wondering, will I be here next year? But this time the answer was yes. It was like the determination was so strong. My tenacity was off the scale. I didn't recognize myself because I'd never had to exercise tenacity like that before. And so when that fear crept in, I would just like bat it off. And it made my life so much more enjoyable to be able to have a Christmas with active cancer at the time, but not feeling terrified that that was going to be it, because I taught myself how to not be terrified. I'd embraced the being terrified. So it had no power over me anymore. It was like, well, I know what fear feels like. I know what this is about. But if I succumb to it, then I'll have a shit Christmas and I won't be healing. So instead, I chose to step out of fear and back into trust in order to enjoy. Like, we're all dying. We're all going to die. None of us knows when our last Christmas will be. But we generally, as a rule, don't live like that, do we? We generally just kind of get on and enjoy it. But when you're given a diagnosis, it's like the clock is ticking. You become so much more aware of your mortality that when big events come by, especially I think if you've got close family and kids, it's like, will I be here to hold my daughter's hand when she gets married, or will I be here to see my son's 18th birthday? Fucking damn right I will, was my attitude. It was like, there was no doubt, there was no room for leakage. It was like, yes. And so with that, it dissipated all fear, but it wasn't a fear avoidance. It was more like, fear is really a state of mind. It's a state of being disconnected from the self. And when you're disconnected, you listen to the thoughts, and the thoughts become truth. And they become the only thing that you can see. It's only when we take time out and we stop and we breathe that we can reconnect with the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is everything. We are part of everything. We are so connected. It's not even funny. We are connected to everything, and yet we live these satellite existences where we're just all skimming past each other and no one is supporting anyone. We've all got our own problems and we all live so independently and individually, and it's isolating and it's lonely. And yet the truth is that we're not isolated and lonely. We are part of something much bigger, but we've been taught to believe that actually we're on our own here. And when we believe that we're on our own, then we become pressurized and we become stressed and we become angry and fearful. All of the negative emotions. And then when we connect, we realize that actually there's a lot of peace. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of connectedness. And so with the 8-week course, it's about reconnecting. It's about remembering. It's about facing those fears. It's about understanding where the fear comes from and looking it in the eye and blowing it a kiss. Because it's a survival technique. It's not a bad thing. Fear is here to protect us. And so if we can see it as just like that little kind of, if you've ever watched the movie on Disney, the new one with the mind and the, oh God, I'm so sorry, my brain is like, Inside Out is what it's called. And you've got all these characters. And fear is just like that little anxious kind of worried creature. But it's not real. It's creating stories to create the feeling, to create the stories, to create the feeling. It's like it doesn't ever stop until we go, no, enough, stop. My brain does it all the time, especially early mornings, middle of the night. And sometimes I buy into it. Sometimes I believe the stories. But more often than not, I reassure myself that it's okay. It's just here to look after me. And I tuck it up and it goes back to sleep and I am in peace again, you know. It's something we learn to do. And by creating a group with which to hold that space, there's a safety, there's a sense of safety and connection and no more satellites. It's like we all come together and we share wisdom and knowledge and holding space and love together in order to understand that fear has its place. But it doesn't need to be a part of daily life. It just doesn't. But sadly, the media and everything, like, feeding us fearful news. And so we're constantly kind of questioning the stability. But once you get rid of all of the crap, once you clear all of that away, there's just a space, there's a silence, and there's a safety. And that's the essence of the 8-week course, is about creating that safe space where you can look at the fear, understand it, and learn to love it, learn to recognize it, and learn to be able to tuck it up and get on with enjoying life, because we have one life in this body. So it's important to try to live that wisely, and with as much connection as we can have, really. Okay. Lots of love.